Welcome to Jenny Talks. Let me tell you a story called The Ghost's Judgment. It's about a wealthy family in Shandong province during ancient times. The Bian family had a beautiful daughter named Yanzi, who was well known for her beauty far and wide. Many young men admired her, but Yanzi fell for a scholar named Yi, who lived in the adjacent alley. They secretly began a relationship. One day, Yanzi asked her maid to deliver a letter to Yi, asking him to meet her in her room that night. Unbeknownst to her, the maid had been bribed by a local ruffian named Mao. The maid told Mao about Yanzi's plan, and Mao, in turn, gave her some money to keep quiet, and instructed her to tell Yanzi that the message had been delivered. That night, Yanzi quietly instructed the maid to unlock the side door of the courtyard, and she dressed up beautifully, waiting in her room for Yi to sneak in through the side door for their rendezvous. At the same time, Mao scaled the wall of the Bian family's residence, intending to impersonate Yi and meet Yanzi in her room. However, unfamiliar with the layout, he mistakenly entered Yanzi's father's bedroom instead. Upon seeing the intruder, Yanzi's father, instead of realizing the mistake, thought Mao was there to rob them. He then engaged in a struggle with the robber, and Mao quickly grabbed a stick, hitting him on the back of the head, killing him instantly. Realizing what he had done, Mao fled without meeting Yanzi. Meanwhile, Yanzi waited in vain for Yi all night, and eventually went to bed, disappointed. The next morning, a servant found Yanzi's father's lifeless body, covered in blood. Terrified, the servant ran to the courtyard, shouting that the master had been murdered. Seeing her father's body, Yanzi burst into tears. Authorities were notified, and an investigator examined the scene and determined that the death occurred around 11 o'clock the previous night. Yanzi was shocked because that was the time she and Yi had arranged to meet. She concluded that Yi must have encountered her father in the courtyard, killed him, and fled. Determined to avenge her father, she reported their arrangement to the authorities. Yi, appearing timid and innocent, was arrested but denied the accusation. The county magistrate, suspecting his guilt, subjected him to torture until he confessed to the crime and was sentenced to death. The case was reviewed by the prefectural court, presided over by Magistrate Wu, a discerning official. Observing Yi, Magistrate Wu sensed his innocence and decided to interrogate him personally without resorting to torture. After questioning Yi, Magistrate Wu realized that the real culprit was still at large. He ordered an investigation of the neighborhood and apprehended several suspects, bringing them to the city god temple to stand trial before the deities. Magistrate Wu said, "The murderer is among you. Today, facing the divine, do not speak falsely. If you confess now, the punishment will be lenient. Otherwise, once the truth is revealed, justice will be served without mercy." All of them vehemently denied ever committing murder. Magistrate Wu declared, "Very well, let the ghost judge then." He ordered the temple attendants to cover all the windows of the city god temple with black blankets, plunging the hall into darkness. The bailiff stripped the suspects of their upper garments and provided them with a basin of water to wash their hands. Then, facing the wall, Magistrate Wu instructed, "Stand still and do not move. Soon, the ghost will write on the back of the murderer." After 10 minutes, Magistrate Wu led the suspects out of the dark hall and discovered that while others' backs were clean, one person's back was covered in dust with 2 handprints, Mao. Pointing at Mao, Magistrate Wu declared that the ghosts had identified the true culprit. Mao, realizing his capture was imminent, confessed to the crime. Magistrate Wu's seemingly supernatural abilities were, in fact, a psychological ploy. He had arranged for white chalk to be applied to the wall and black coal dust to be added to the water used for hand washing. In the darkness of the hall, the suspects couldn't see these details. When Magistrate Wu claimed that ghosts would write on the murderer's back, Mao pressed tightly against the wall to avoid detection, inadvertently picking up the chalk and coal dust, leaving behind the incriminating handprints.